By Ari Aramesh, expert on national security and foreign policy. Ari, good to see you this morning. I appreciate your time. As someone who has closely followed developments in Afghanistan over the past few years, what are your thoughts as once again we see the Taliban taking possession of the presidential palace?
Good morning, Niall. Not only as someone who's followed the events, but who's been there on the ground. There are two issues here that we totally forgot. First and foremost, we forgot that what our mission in Afghanistan was, which was to defeat Al Qaeda, to kill bin Laden, and to sort of that nation building, and the process came second, which ultimately failed. And the second issue was, do you really negotiate with the Taliban or you don't? Do you really accept them, sort of the promises of having good faith or negotiating good faith, or you don't? And what happens to the Afghan national government, or whatever that is, government of former President Ashraf Ghani, that was immersed in corruption, and so was his predecessor, President Hamid Karzai. This doesn't at all justify the absolute uncivilized, barbaric brutality of the Taliban and their ideology, but it definitely paints a more accurate picture of why, both for ethnic reasons, the majority of Afghans are Pashtuns, so is the Taliban, and also for other reasons, vast corruption, and government inefficiency and complete sort of internal disorder and infighting and bickering amongst those in charge, be it President Ashraf Ghani, his executive administrator, Abdullah, Field Marshal Dostum. So there were a lot of ethnic cleavages, ethnic divides, and also sectarian divides, sort of on a less notable sort of surface. And also a lot of political and monetary and financial interest. The problem with Afghanistan, in addition to being a country that is economically very, very poorly developed, is that means of communication is poor. You're talking about a small percentage of the population that is literate. And it's also flush with much natural resources, which brings a lot of interest for both internal and international corruption. Overall, we can discuss why and how both the Trump administration's policy to negotiate with the Taliban and former Secretary of State Pompeo's meeting with the Taliban delegation was a mistake, and why it was even a bigger mistake for President Biden to withdraw from Afghanistan in such haste. As we know, the sort of post-Nowruz, that's the Afghan Persian New Year, that's March 20th, the post-Nowruz months in Afghanistan, when the weather is rather decent from March, let's say, to September and October, those are operational months. Those are months when the Taliban is on the march, when you see a lot of suicide bombings, when passages are open through mountains and through hills and through fields. So if you really want to pull out U.S. troops, you do it post-October, after December, between December and March, when the weather is rather cold, hill mountain passes are closed. You don't do it in the middle of summer when the Taliban has got freedom of movement and can enjoy from really good weather.
Ari, sorry to interrupt. Ari, sorry to interrupt, but just as you allude to there, of course, these plans set in motion by President Trump, but President Biden cannot excuse himself from responsibility. He ultimately could have chosen a different course. But you mentioned the negotiations that took place with the Taliban. How much of what we are seeing on the ground in Kabul this morning can be directly traced back to that peace agreement that was nominally signed between the US and the Taliban back in early 2020 in Doha?
Much of it. First of all, the man here on radio silence, who was kept in power, who was kept in this position by President Biden, is Ambassador Zalmay Khalilzad, the man in charge of negotiating directly with the Taliban. Where is he? He's been completely silent. He's in Qatar, he's in Doha, but he hasn't said a word in the past few days. Now, Khalilzad, what he did was to sideline the Afghan government, negotiate with the Taliban directly. This also allowed the Taliban to rearm, regroup, and reorganize when they were given guarantees. This is under Trump, and then later on under Biden, they were given guarantees that U.S. forces would not engage them so long as they wouldn't engage U.S. forces. Now, you see, when your real professional army, the U.S. Army, promises not to engage as long as you don't engage them, that gives you a really good leeway, breathing and breeding ground to be able to rearm, regroup, and re-energize and go after the main culprit, your main enemy, your main adversary, which is the Afghan government. So the big question is, where's Ambassador Khalilzad? Probably got on the phone yesterday and convinced President Ashraf Ghani to get out of the country. But again, the buck stops with President Biden. Yes, he's the man in the White House right now. It's Secretary of State Tony Blinken, who is in the State Department. But we have to look at the full picture. And this didn't start yesterday. I mean, Afghanistan came in October of 2001. And I think each president wanted to get out. They couldn't. They didn't know how. But Afghanistan has had almost 20 years of full American support. We can get into details.
We're just about to run out of time. I just want to ask you briefly, just one final question on all of this. We have heard from senior figures in the United States, including the Secretary of State of all people, that somehow they were taken by surprise by the speeds of the Taliban takeover. What do you make of that? Because frankly, there are any number of other people suggesting that the writing has been on the wall for quite some time.
Yeah, that came as a shock to me as well. A lot of military commanders on the ground warned the president, warned the State Department that this will happen. The Afghan government or the Afghan national military does not really exist, and they will collapse and they will implode. And they did. A lot of civilians, or at least from the political on the political side of things, on the political they did not believe that, or at least they didn't want to believe that. But again, on the ground, both field commanders and the commanders on the senior level warned the White House and warned the Pentagon and warned the State Department that the government cannot and will not withstand a major Taliban offensive. So no, there are no excuses here. It happened on our watch, but at the same time, again, let's not make the mistake of saying, the Taliban just fell from the sky, as absolutely what it does, unfortunately. And secondly, what's next? Right now here, the biggest winner is Pakistan. Partially another winner is Iran. We are going to be out of there, but let's make sure this does not become another safe haven for Al-Qaeda, for ISIS, for other radical Islamic terrorists who would come back and attack us or attack the free world in the years to come.
I hope for